This is one of those builds that no matter what class or subclass you might main or prefer, you need to try this regardless. It just has that special feeling, playstyle, and sound effects that make me think this is why I love playing Destiny 2. The gameplay you're watching is 15 power level under the recommended, and this Titan says, I don't care. I am going to destroy everything in my path, and I'm going to do it the most Titan way possible. This Solar Titan build brings so much to the table. We have infinite abilities, and these abilities hit hard. We can take a champion down to half health with our Titan Slam alone. We have infinite healing thanks to restoration, and always having that up through sunspots. We also have some of the best AoE damage with the instant ignitions produced by our Consecration melee, which means it can ignite entire groups of enemies just by itself, and those instant ignitions scale in damage thanks to our different exotics that you can use with the overall build. With the changes in Lightfall, this build actually got quite a bit better, and I'm going to explain why that is and how it works. So make sure to pay attention to the entire build, because I bet you might learn something that you might not have known beforehand. This build revolves around the Titan aspect called Consecration, and it does way more than you might think in terms of playing into the mods and fragments that we're going to be using. The first part of the Consecration states, while sliding, activate your charged melee ability to launch a wave of solar energy forward, damaging and scorching targets in front of you as you leap into the air. So now we've actually applied Scorch to all the enemies in front of us, and this reaches a good 15 meters or so, which means you have some range to work with here. This part of the ability is important because it plays so well into 3 fragments and some mods with the changes in Lightfall, and will allow for some crazy ability regen all on its own. First and probably most important is the Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. So we're getting melee energy back and creating fire sprites just by slamming down on those enemies we scorched, since our ignition will kill them. When you kill about 2 or 3 enemies with the slam, that will give you half of your melee back just from this one fragment alone. And you're also creating a fire sprite from that fragment, which is going to feed your grenade ability. Then we add Ember of Singeing. Our class ability recharges faster when we scorch targets. This gives about half of our barricade back just from doing the uppercut, and that barricade is going to be important later on in the build. And the third fragment we add is Ember of Torches. This will make us radiant and our allies radiant for that sweet 25% weapon damage boost when we hit something with our uppercut or slam. So that's 3 fragments so far, and then we add our second aspect into the mix, which is Sol Invictus. And this creates a sunspot with solar ability final blows, which again we are guaranteed to get because our slam and the ignition will kill enemies. We'll go more into the sunspots in a second because that is basically your secondary action after you do your slam, but our powered melee here, the Consecration Slam, all on its own is providing melee energy back from Ember of Searing and class ability back from Ember of Singeing. Then it creates a fire sprite from Searing as well, which gives 20% grenade energy. So our slam is feeding all 3 abilities on its own, plus it gives you a 25% weapon buff with torches. So talk about a very strong ability at base, with a guaranteed ignition at that. Then it also creates a sunspot where it killed a target, and it will also create a fire sprite and an orb of power now thanks to the mod heavy handed. So after we go up into the air and slam the ground and have that ignition happen, we then move forward and pass through that sunspot, and we get ability regeneration, we get healing from restoration, we collect the fire sprite and the orb of power, which feeds our grenade and also our 3 other abilities thanks to the orb of power working with 3 different mods on our boots. And I just can't stress this enough that this is all created from one simple slam. That one slam is doing so much for the entire build now. I mean, we even get 3 armor charges just by passing through the sunspot for melee kickstart on our gauntlets. And we still haven't went over our exotics or other mods. If you do want to see the written version of this build with a great build pick as well, then the links will be down below for you, and you can find it over on Mobalytics, where all my builds are located as well. The fourth and final fragment that you want to add to this is Ember of Eruption. Your solar ignitions have increased area of effect, so now we just made the slam that much better. The grenade I choose to take with this is the Thermite Grenade. It sends forth that burning line of fire, and it deals damage and scorches targets in its path. So now you have this flaming scorch of your Thermite Grenade and the flaming scorch of your slam, so they work hand in hand together, which is awesome. And thermites did get the 20% damage buff at the beginning of Lightfall, so they work a lot better now, and we're gonna beef this up even with our exotic as well. Speaking of our exotic, we're gonna use Heart of Inmost Light. You can can also use Synthoceps with this build, but personally I think it does plenty of damage with Heart of Lone, and you get other utility with Heart on top of it. When you have an empowered melee ×2, your melee is doing 20% increased damage, and when you have empowered grenade ×2, it's doing 35% increased damage. So we're buffing the damage of both our abilities with this, and then we're also getting some insane ability regeneration rate. So on our melee and our grenade, we get 800% increase regeneration rate just by having the Heart of Immolite empowered ×2 procced. Now our barricade is a little bit lower. We only get 25% ability energy at ×1 and a 50% ability energy ×2, but that's okay because our subclass is taking care of our barricade along with our mods. And then we just pop that barricade to fuel the other two abilities to get the big damage and the big ability regeneration rate. So it's okay that our barricade took a little bit of a hit, and it's definitely okay that Heart of Immolite only lasts 5 seconds, because as you can see in the gameplay, it doesn't matter. You always are going to be empowered and having this bad boy procced because we're cycling through these abilities so freaking fast. Now let's go over the mods for the build because they do a lot, as I mentioned earlier, since we can just get that Orb of Power and the Fire Sprite from our melee ability. On the helmet, we're going to take Hands On and Ashes to Assets. These both feed our super, and we're going to be getting a lot of kills with our abilities. And then on your helmet, you're going to take your Siphon mod to match your weapon that you're using, so a double kill can generate Orbs of Power. On your gauntlets, we're going to take Melee Kickstart, so when your melee energy is fully expended, you gain melee energy. We're going to have 3 armor charges to use with Melee Kickstart all the time, so you're getting close to 40% of your melee back when you just use your melee. That's not including the melee energy you're getting from Ember of Searing from our fragment, or what we're getting from Orbs of Power when we pick those up. We're also going to take Heavy Handed so we can create that Orb of Power with our melee ability, and then Momentum Transfer. Causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown, and this can actually proc twice on our Thermite grenade because it lasts long enough over time, and if it hits something when you first throw it and then at the end of its life it hits something, it'll proc Momentum Transfer twice for you. On our chest piece, we're just going to take damage resistance, so whatever activity you're doing, just use the damage resist that matches what you're doing. And then in our boots, we're going to take 3 Orb of Power mods here since we don't need any extra healing because we have Restoration from our subclass. We're going to take Innervation, reduce grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power, Invigoration, reduce melee cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power, and then Absolution, reduce all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So now each Orb of Power you grab is giving you 15% ability regen to your grenade and your melee, and then our class ability is getting about 5% back from that. So we're just feeding every ability with everything that we're doing. And then in our class item, you're going to take Reaper, so every time we pop that barricade and you get a weapon kill, you'll spawn an Orb of Power. That Orb of Power just feeds everything like I already said. We're also going to take Outreach, reduce melee cooldown when using your class ability. We get 12% of our melee back when we just pop that barricade. And then we're also going to take Bomber, reduce grenade cooldown when using your class ability. And Titans also get 12% back when they use that barricade for their grenade. So overall, this is one of the strongest ability spam builds in the entire game because you have survivability and you have endless abilities, but on top of that, you have a ton of damage coming from those abilities. Like I said earlier, your melee alone can half health a champion 15 power level under. So this is my updated Consecration build, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.